A girl who had never learned piano somehow played a world-famous piece. She had almost secretly glanced a couple of times while her mother was giving piano lessons to a wealthy heir named Jean-Marc. Even world-renowned pianists might need several days to perform the piece smoothly on their first try. Yet Yusul played her flawlessly on her first attempt. Earlier, Jean-Marc had been learning the same piece for over half a month, but he still couldn't meet his teacher's expectations. When the teacher pointed out his mistakes, he flew into a rage and even pressured his powerful father because Jean-Marc had been praised as a piano prodigy since childhood. He believed his inability to play well was entirely the teacher's fault. Every day during lessons, he was also bothered by the presence of the teacher's daughter, Yusul. He had grown tired of the teacher who was playing. Her performance was not only smooth, but more beautiful than her mother's. Through her playing, she silently made it clear to Jean-Marc. The problem wasn't the teacher. It was his own lack of understanding. Yusul's mother stood frozen in shock. She had never formally taught her daughter, and yet Yusul was performing at a level that rivaled professional pianists. It was then that she realized her daughter might truly be a once-in-a-generation genius, an oiled rich boy like Jean-Marc. But the shame and injustice they endured that day would not be forgotten. 10 years passed in the blink of an eye. Yusul had grown into an undeniable piano prodigy, while Jean-Marc, despite all the resources at his disposal, had fallen behind. Yusul had surpassed him in every conceivable way. On the day of an impression, Yusul, standing beside her mother, insisted on applying to be Jean-Marc's page-turner. With just a slight delay in turning each page, she could ruin his performance. When Yusul made the offer, Jean-Marc visibly panicked. The students in the audience watched eagerly, expecting drama. But to their surprise, Yusul didn't play any tricks. She turned even Jean-Marc seemed unsettled. Later, Yusul calmly stated that she and Jean-Marc weren't even on the same level. Resorting to petty-mindedness, Yusul's petty tactics would only drag her down. When it was her turn to perform, Jean-Marc volunteered to be her page-turner. Her mother immediately opposed the idea, but Yusul ignored her. From then on, Jean-Marc grew increasingly uncomfortable. At a crucial moment, he intentionally knocked the sheet music off the stand and pretended it was an accident. He looked around with feigned innocence and asked the judges for understanding. As he bent down to retrieve the sheet music, Yusul slapped his hand away, then closed her eyes and continued playing. She had already memorized the entire piece with her photographic memory and genius-level talent. Her performance didn't falter for even a moment. Naturally, she won first place. Jean-Marc not only lost the competition, he lost his dignity. As he watched the mother and daughter walk away with grace and confidence, his heart filled with bitter envy. That night, Jean-Marc went to a church and stood before a statue of Jesus. There, he made a cruel and hateful wish that Yusul would be forever trapped in darkness. Jean-Marc's heart was filled with bitter envy. At that very moment, Jean-Marc received a phone call. A classmate told him that Yusul had been in a car accident. A runaway truck had slammed into the passenger side of her vehicle, the side where she had been sitting. The crash had left her blind. Just as Jean-Marc had made his malicious wish, fate answered in the cruelest way possible. Piano prodigy Yusul lost her sight in a car accident. Shockingly, her mother didn't seem concerned about her physical condition. Instead, Jean-Marc said that she would never be able to play piano again. Her strong-willed nature simply made it hard for her to express love. When she stepped out again, she had regained her usual cold demeanor. Meanwhile, a heartbroken Yusul left her hospital room and accidentally bumped into a young man. She asked him how to get to the rooftop. Noticing that she was struggling to move around, the young man decided to escort her himself. Elsewhere, Jean-Marc, who had been endlessly praying at the church after losing the piano competition, saw Yusul's blindness. He had just cursed her, and now something this tragic had happened. It couldn't be a coincidence, could it? That owed him. It felt like everything he took pride in was being effortlessly snatched away by her. Of course, he'd only made the curse out of frustration and jealousy. But upon hearing what had actually happened, Jean-Marc was overwhelmed with guilt. He felt as if he had somehow caused the accident. Filled with remorse, he brought flowers and went to the hospital to visit her. As he walked in, he saw the young man's arm walking past him. After dropping her off, the young man turned and left, now alone, felt her way toward the edge of the rooftop, and slowly climbed over the railing. She was ready to end her young life. Hearing the young man's voice again pushed her even deeper into despair. She blamed Jean Mock for the humiliation her mother had suffered. She felt she had become a mere tool used by her mother to take revenge on Jean Mock. Her mother had projected her own failed dreams of becoming a pianist onto Yusul, but she had no real expectations. Her childhood had lost all its color under this pressure. Because her hands were valuable, her mother never let her ride a bike. Even when Yusul suffered motion sickness, she was forced to recite piano pieces during car rides. Gradually, Yusul became nothing more than a vessel for her mother's vanity. She had once thought that losing her sight might be a good thing. It might finally set her free. Her genuine outburst of pain made Jean Mock cry. Yusul was tired. She no longer wanted to pretend she loved the piano. With her eyes tightly shut, she leaned backward, letting herself fall. But nothing happened. Yusul was confused. Wasn't she supposed to be falling to her death? As it turned out, the young man had seen through her intentions long ago. He hadn't taken her to the rooftop at all. He had brought her to the parking garage instead. He understood her despair. After all, after returning to the hospital, the young man told his mother that he had saved a girl's life. His mother didn't care much. She was just relieved that her reckless son hadn't gotten into any more trouble. As they stepped outside, it had already begun to rain. The mother tried to open an umbrella, only for the top to shoot off like a missile into the sky. Chasik burst into laughter at the absurd sight before him. But as he laughed, tears began to roll down his face uncontrollably. In truth, Chasik saw him standing on that rooftop, ready to jump. Not long ago, during a youth pole vault championship, Chasik had only needed to win a bronze medal to secure admission to a top. His rival's parents laughed and mocked him, but Chasik's mother stood firm, her eyes full of belief. Chasik was determined to blaze his own path, not just for himself, but for his mother too. He summoned all his strength, powered through his legs, and tuned his body to perfect balance. Something went terribly wrong. At the hospital, initial tests revealed only a minor injury. Chasik and his mother were relieved, but then the doctor returned with serious news. A scan showed Chasik had a lumbar disc separation in his lower back. From now on, any intense physical activity was out of the question. He had just broken a national record, only to be forced into early retirement. Chasik tried to laugh it off, saying it was fine. But his mother could see right through his forced smile. While wandering, he happened to see Yusul, who had also lost her dream when the accident took her eyesight and ended her ability to play piano. Perhaps because of that shared pain, Chasik instinctively knew where she was headed. He stopped her. And not only that, he fiercely scolded her back to her senses. When Chasik looked at his mother's broken umbrella, it felt like he was staring at himself, a person who had lost all worth once his talent was gone. Back home, Chasik fell into a sigh of relief. Thankfully, her son wasn't the sharpest knife in the drawer. Otherwise, her little story might not have worked. Late at night, with a renewed sense of purpose, the boy ran joyfully through the streets. Staring at a poster of his father, he made up his mind. He would study piano seriously and bring the family back together. Meanwhile, Yusul, who had always followed her mother's plans without question, finally spoke her own mind. She said she no longer wanted to play the piano. From now on, she wanted to make her own choices in life. Early the next morning, a new student arrived at the arts high school. It was Chasik, the sports student of over 10 years, now determined to switch to piano. The department head couldn't believe it. On the other side of campus, Yusul, who had lost her eyesight in the car accident, was also going through changes. Once obedient, she now showed signs of rebellion, arguing with her mother and insisting on walking to school alone. What Yusul didn't know was that someone was watching her from afar. Jimak, the very boy who once cursed her, seeing her current state, filled him with guilt. It was Yusul's first time walking outside alone since the accident. Carefully feeling her way forward, she tapped along the walls, moving slowly. A car stopped her, but her mother, Yusul, told him to go home. Jimak watched as she walked a few steps, then turned back to talk to thin air. From that day, he began helping her in quiet, unnoticed ways. Swiping her bus card, clearing her path, even fixing her slippers. One of their classmates, an eager gossip, spotted it all. This sight of former rivals now helping one another so gently was sure to cause a lot of trouble. Because of Yusul's limited mobility, the teacher decided to assign her an assistant. But no one volunteered. Everyone thought it was too much trouble. "I'll help you, Yusul," came a sudden voice. It was Jimak, who not only stepped forward, but submitted a 20,000-word application to explain why he should be chosen. Though he insisted it was only for extra credit. No one quite believed him. But Yusul refused. She was sure he had some hidden motive. Suddenly, a loud voice echoed through the classroom. "Yusul, I'll help you too." It was Chasik, who'd been loitering around the school and hadn't left. Then came the most dramatic moment yet. Chasik dropped to his knees and declared his loyalty, saying he would become a knight to protect his beautiful princess. Jean-Marc was completely stunned. Wasn't a knight supposed to kneel on one knee? Why did Chasik look like he was about to propose? Seeing he was about to be kicked out, Chasik quickly explained he'd take good care of Yusul. He would escort her to and from school every day, take notes for her in my own choice. Yusul interrupted, cool and calm. From that moment on, Chasik became the giant wall standing between Jean-Marc and Yusul. And so, this clueless goofball somehow ended up auditing the elite piano class. Today was Chasik's first day as Yusul's assistant. But when the two of them stood together, most classmates thought it looked like a cheerful idiot paired with someone perpetually annoyed. Chasik, who knew absolutely nothing about music or piano, struggled hard. He couldn't even follow the class, much less help Yusul take notes. Just sitting there made his head hurt. He soon realized that even just reading musical terms out loud was a nightmare. His pronunciation was awful, and laughter often erupted around him. His cluelessness only worsened Yusul's already sour mood. After class, Jean-Marc pulled Yusul aside. "Why would you pick a total idiot over me as your helper?" Yusul calmly responded, "Because you're even more annoying." Jean-Marc finally understood just how much she couldn't stand him. Chasik went out of his way to install a back seat on his bicycle to take Yusul to school. But she refused. Her mother had strictly forbidden her from riding bikes. She also made it clear she only chose a helper because the teacher required it. Chasik was just an audit student. They both had their own reasons, and there was no need to interfere in each other's lives. They barely walked into a wall. 3 times. At 7 a.m., Chasik's mom came to wake him up, only to find his room covered in handwritten notes on musical theory and piano techniques. Chasik had been waking up hours early to study. He even buried himself in the library on weekends, surrounded by books, diligently making progress. Despite struggling, he seemed genuinely happy. He even tried to see having someone always talking beside her might make the darkness feel a little less lonely. No one knew Chasik was the one who most needed comfort. He had lost the athleticism he had ever tried to do was bring warmth to others. He knew Yusul had never once ridden a bicycle in her life. Every now and then, he hoped she might try, but she refused him every single time. After walking her to the street corner, Chasik turned around to head home, just like always. He heard a dog barking, followed by Yusul's frightened scream. Blind and helpless, Yusul had been attacked by a vicious stray dog. The dog lunged, knocking her to the ground. The dog's owner, seeing she was blind, had the audacity to twist the story. He claimed she had struck the dog with her cane and demanded compensation. Seeing Yusul, and she felt joy she had never known before. But just as they reached her house, a familiar voice rang out. It was her mother. Yusul dropped her cane. Her mother, smiling, warmly thanked Chasik and brought Yusul inside. Chasik bent down to pick up the cane, intending to return it. But before he could knock, he overheard the fierce argument inside. Her mother was furious. She scolded Yusul not just for riding a bike, but slapped her across the face. "I gave up everything for you," she shouted. "And this is how you repay me?" Yusul finally exploded. All her life, she had been crushed by her mother's endless expectations that left her gasping for air. She had done something just for herself, That short bike ride made her feel a freedom she'd never known. "There's so much I still want to do," she said through tears. "I want to see the mountains. I want to see the ocean. I want to watch the sunset." Yusul didn't want to live the life her mother arranged for her. Not anymore. And she certainly didn't want to live carrying resentment toward the person who raised her. Her mother looked at the wall, lined with her daughter's trophies and certificates, evidence of 10 years of glory. Her mother looked at the wall, lined with her daughter's trophies and certificates, evidence of 10 years of glory. But suddenly, she realized, her daughter hadn't smiled in 10 years. The next day, she received protection money. But Chasik wasn't offended. With his usual good-natured spirit, he simply asked, "Then how should I change?" Faced with such sincerity, even Yusul's mother was at a loss for words. Later, Yusul wanted to thank Chasik for everything he had done. Then, instead of accepting a gift, he brought her to a quiet underpass and asked for one thing. "I want to hear you play." Yusul sat silently before the piano, and then her fingers began to move across loomed from the black and white keys. In that moment, Chasik's desire to learn piano grew even stronger. But back at school, while Yusul was changing in the classroom, a male student tried to secretly record her with his phone. Startled by a sound outside, she froze mid-motion and only resumed when she was sure the intruder had left. As it turned out, Chasik didn't know what to do with her phone, and even offered to share the video. Kim Mok smashed the phone and punched him hard, but in doing so, he injured his own hand, his piano hand. When his father saw the wound, he said that cold silence from his own family pushed Kim Mok into despair. His father had always known. Kim Mok's piano talent was mediocre. His success came only from sheer discipline and obsession. But being part of a wealthy, high-pressure family meant hearing only praise, never honest feedback, and that had blinded him. If he didn't wake up soon, the blow from reality would only hit harder. Enraged, Kim Mok slammed his injured hand on the piano keys. Each strike was an outburst of pain. "I won't play again," he swore. The next day, a new poster went up on the school bulletin board. The annual duo piano competition was only 4 months away. Chasik's eyes lit up. But everyone laughed. "You don't even meet the basic qualifications to sign up." That's when Chasik made his boldest. He revealed, "My father is pianist Hyun-myung Sik. He even showed a photo of his parents together. The class dismissed it as a celebrity selfie." Frustrated, Chasik declared, "Then I'll win the competition and prove it." Even Yusuf thought that was ridiculous. Most contestants had 10 years of piano training, not even a foundation. Even if he were Mozart's son, 4 months wouldn't be enough. Her words made Chasik fall silent. On the way home, he didn't say "ah." The normally chatty, upbeat boy was suddenly quiet. All around them was nothing but silence. What Yusuf didn't know was, every night, Chasik dreamed the same dream. In that dream, he and Yusuf played the same melody side by side. She wasn't blind, and he wasn't seen as some thug. Whenever their eyes met, they smiled. One evening, he brought her to the same underpass again. He looked at the piano and said, almost to himself, if this was how it all began, could there be a chance? She didn't believe it, so Chasik played the song from his dream. Then he began to play. He played the song from his dream because he thought, if this was only a dream, it would be such a waste. What Yusuf didn't know was how much effort Chasik had put into preparing for that moment. How many early mornings, how many books, how many failures. Despite the stares from strangers, Chasik practiced in the underground passage day and night, all for a dream that wasn't even real. But in his scarred, calloused hands, Yusuf felt something else entirely. His stubbornness, his quiet strength. It reminded her of her own resilience. And just like that, the girl who had nearly given up on music found herself believing again. She smiled. That night, Chasik told his mother, I'm entering the piano competition. One day, I'll make it so you won't have to struggle anymore. You won't have to stay out so late hanging up posters. His mother looked at her son, so grown, so earnest, and for the first time, she truly began to hope that this competition might change everything. Later, Yusuf braved the snow with a textbook balanced on her head, Jinmak quietly holding an umbrella over her head. I heard acid in the snow can make your hair fall out, she warned him. I'm not trying to go bald before I turn 20. Just then, Chasik walked by, snatched the umbrella away, and left with her. Jinmak watched the girl disappear into the distance. Outside the school gate, Chasik and Yusuf's duet partner energy shifted. Yusuf grabbed Chasik by the collar. At this rate, we're nowhere near ready. If you go on stage now, we'll be a laughingstock. And I'm not getting embarrassed because of you. But despite the friction, they encouraged each other, pushed each other, and together, they walked into the storm. Thus began Yusuf's hell training program for Chasik. Though she couldn't see, she could instantly tell by the sound of each key whether his hands were out of place. What started as lessons soon became daily roast sessions, each correction sharper than the last. They bickered constantly, like sworn rivals 1 minute, best friends the next. Their days were filled with fights, laughter, and endless practice. Suddenly, 2 months had passed. Chasik's skills improved drastically, and their four-hand duet was beginning to truly sing. Chasik, despite his goofy, rebellious exterior, had a heart stronger than steel. Yusuf, beneath her cold and guarded shell, held a vibrant, curious soul. They made a promise. Whatever tomorrow brings, whether joy or hardship, they would face it side by side without fear. Elsewhere, the two mothers met face to face. No, not to arrange a wedding, but because Yusuf's mother had decided to sell the piano, believing her daughter had abandoned music for good. And Chasik's mother? She had come with the hope of buying one. After hearing that her son was serious about competing, maybe it was the alcohol Yusuf's mother had drunk. Yusuf's mother did the unthinkable. She offered to give the piano away, not because she no longer cared, but because she didn't want her daughter's tragedy to repeat itself in someone else's child. When Yusuf lost her sight, her mother cried until her body felt hollow. There were days she couldn't see a reason to go on. But even in that darkness, she was the first to pick herself up. She covered every sharp corner in the house with padding. She quietly followed behind her daughter on the walk to school. Even when Yusuf practiced alone in the freezing subway, her mother would stand nearby, trembling, hiding her hands in her coat sleeves. And it was there that she first saw her daughter's smile. Like this video and subscribe this channel. More dramas, wait for the last part. From the heart, the only one listening now was Chasik's mother. She too had been walking her own path of hardship, and no one could understand better than her. As the competition drew closer, Chasik began to unravel. No matter how hard he tried, he couldn't reach Yusol's goal, 135 keystrokes per minute. Just 1 week before the big day, Chasik vanished. This boy who had dreamed of standing on that stage suddenly disappeared, gripped by fear. Not long before, he had asked Yusol, "What are the chances of us actually winning?" She had replied coldly, "About 0.001%. "Then why are you even doing this?" he asked. Yusol just shrugged. "To me, a blind girl and a clueless boy, that's about the right odds. But even if it's 1 in 10 million, isn't that still worth betting on?" Chasik shouted into the silence, "I am trying," but reality was cruel. Talent couldn't be forced. As the day loomed ever closer, he still couldn't hit 135. The pressure crushed him. Desperate for a breakthrough, he turned to someone else, Yusol's old rival, the genius pianist Chinmok. Though Chinmok coldly said he wouldn't help, no one wanted to see Yusol play with joy again more than he did. The day before the competition arrived, and still, Yusol hadn't seen Chasik in over a week. So she gave an ultimatum. "If you don't show me your progress by tonight, we're dropping out." That night, Chasik appeared, and then as the keys began to move, it wasn't Chasik playing, it was Chinmok. Yusol whispered, "Truly perfect." And then she said something that stunned Chinmok. "You made it beautiful." For the first time in 10 years, the words of praise from her lifelong rival brought tears streaming down Chinmok's face. He had waited a decade to hear that one word. The day of the competition arrived. Chasik was stunned to discover that the head judge was none other than the world-renowned pianist. He approached him nervously. "You know me, right?" he asked. "You're my father." He didn't answer, and in that moment, Chasik realized the awful truth. This man was not his father. He never had been. Everything he believed about his bloodline, his talent, his identity, was a lie, fabricated by his mother to give him a reason to keep living. Chasik looked down at his bruised, battered hands. The despair hit like a wave. This truth shattered his confidence completely. And so, once again, Chasik turned to Chinmak. "I'm not a pianist's son," he confessed. "I'm no one special." Chasik still couldn't do it. No matter how hard he tried, he just couldn't reach the goal of playing 135 keystrokes per minute. The pressure weighed heavily on him. Chasik made a decision. He asked Chinmak, his longtime rival and once distant friend, to take his place in the competition. He had already secretly changed the participant list, hoping that Chinmak could help Yusol win the championship they both dreamed of. Chinmak was stunned. He hadn't prepared. He stood frozen, uncertain of what to do, until a voice echoed in his mind. He looked at his former mentor, the one who had once inspired him to start playing, and something clicked. Without hesitation, he stepped forward. Backstage, Chasik found Yusol in the dressing room. He gently took her hands, not saying much, just letting their shared silence speak. Yusol wasn't alone anymore. After everything was settled, Chasik brought his mother to the underground passage. He wanted to prove through his actions that his talent came from his mother and no one else. "I am not someone else's child. I am my mother's child." In that moment, the grand classical hall and the humble underground tunnel merged in spirit. 3 teenagers played the same piece of music together. Each had their own weaknesses and had faced personal lows. They were both rivals and friends, inspiring one another at different moments. Before the performance, Chinmak had visited his father. He told him, "Even if I end up just being a piano teacher after 10 years, it's okay. At least in those 10 years, I was doing something I loved." Yusol never resented her mother. The anger she showed was only because she didn't want her mother to lose her own life for her sake. Now, as she played again, the smile on her face she most hoped her mother could see it. As Chasik played for his mother, he surpassed his own limits. He successfully reached 135 notes per minute. His mother finally saw the rainbow her son once spoke of. The 3 of them deeply felt everything the piano brought them. Through the rise and fall of the piano, through the fall of the music, they expressed their love for the world. These youths gave it their all just to reach the finish line of success. They learned that everyone's path to success looks different. Some people charge forward like waves in a storm. Others move slowly, like streams cutting through stone. Steady, patient, but in the end, it doesn't matter how you get there, only that you keep going. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe and drop a heart if you love the story.